Welcome to Unlocking Passion. Men Report. Let's begin with a new story. Harold Bennett stood in the driveway of what was supposed to be his retirement home and stared at a padlock on the gate and a sold sign written in Thai script. He had only been gone for a few days, on a routine visa run to Vientiane, one his young wife had insisted he make alone. Now, at 68 years old with aching knees and his heart pounding against his ribs, Hal realized with devastating clarity that the small house he had bought 8 months earlier no longer belonged to him. It had never belonged to him. The property was in her name. The joint bank account had been emptied, and when he called her phone number, a recorded message in Thai informed him that the number was no longer in service. Standing in the tropical heat of rural Udon Thani, surrounded by rice fields and the distant sound of chickens, Hal understood with crushing clarity that the young woman who had called him her hero, who had cried when he proposed, who had promised to care for him in his old age, had erased him from her life as efficiently as someone deletes a text message. Everything he had worked for over more than 4 decades, the business, the house in Tucson, the retirement fund he had carefully built, was gone, and so was she. Harold Bennett had spent most of his 68 years being invisible. In Tucson, Arizona, where the desert heat baked the asphalt and life moved at a predictable, unchanging pace, Hal had been a divorced man approaching 70. His body shop, which he had owned for 30 years, had been sold 6 months after his second divorce was finalized. His ex-wife Margaret had taken the house they had shared for 11 years, and Hal walked away with a settlement that felt more like severance pay than the end of a marriage. He was tired. Tired of arguing, tired of feeling inadequate, tired of being told that he worked too much or cared too little. Margaret had made it clear in their final months together that she found him boring, predictable, and emotionally unavailable. When the divorce was finalized, Hal fought her on nothing. He signed the papers, sold the business to a younger competitor, and decided that if he was going to spend his final years alone, he might as well do it somewhere warm, affordable, and far away from the ghosts of his failures. His first marriage, to a woman named Linda, had ended under similar circumstances 20 years earlier. She had called him emotionally distant, said he put work above family, and left him for a high school teacher who wrote her poetry. After that, Hal threw himself into the shop, working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Work numbed him, gave him purpose, and kept him from thinking too much about what he had lost. But after Margaret left, the numbness turned into something darker. Depression crept in slowly, like water seeping through a crack. Hal would wake up in his small condo and stare at the ceiling, wondering what the point of it all had been. 2 failed marriages, no children, no close friends, only decades of work that had earned him a modest retirement fund, and little else. Thailand had been a dream for years. Hal had read about it online, watched YouTube videos of expatriates who had moved to Pattaya and Thailand, and listened to men in forums talk about the low cost of living, the beautiful scenery, and the welcoming culture. But there was another element, one Hal admitted to himself only much later, the idea that in Thailand, maybe he would no longer be invisible. The video showed older Western men walking hand in hand with young Thai women, smiling into cameras, living lives that looked infinitely richer than anything Hal had known in Arizona. The decision to move came quickly. He sold his small condo, liquidated his retirement accounts, paid off his remaining debts, and boarded a one-way flight to Bangkok with 2 suitcases and about $230,000 in his bank account. It was all he had left. His entire life reduced to a number on a screen. When Hal stepped off the plane at Suvarnabhumi Airport at the end of February, he felt something he had not felt in years: anticipation. The air was thick and humid, pressing against his skin like a warm blanket. The terminal was enormous and modern, filled with travelers from every corner of the world. Signs in Thai script looked like decorative art to him, beautiful and unreadable. He took a taxi to Pattaya, a coastal city 2 hours south of Bangkok, where he had booked a modest apartment near the beach for 6 months. The drive itself was an experience. Highways lined with palm trees, billboards advertising beer and hotels, glimpses of Buddhist temples with golden spires gleaming in the sunlight. Pattaya was loud, chaotic, and overwhelming in the best possible way. Motorcycles wove through traffic as if lanes and traffic signals did not exist. Street vendors lined the sidewalks selling grilled meat on skewers, fruit sliced into perfect pieces, and steaming bowls of noodles. Neon lights advertised everything from massage parlors to karaoke bars, and the air smelled like a mixture of exhaust fumes, fried garlic, and salty sea breeze. Hal spent his first few weeks walking along Beach Road, eating cheap meals in open-air restaurants, and marveling at how far his money went. A plate of pad thai cost less than $3. A beer in a beach bar was even cheaper. A full meal with drinks rarely went over $10. He could live comfortably here on a fraction of what it had cost in Arizona. But more than the affordability, Hal noticed something else. People smiled at him. Waitresses called him kun, a polite Thai term of respect. Bartenders asked where he came from and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Women, young, beautiful women, waved at him as he passed bars, inviting him to sit for a drink. Shopkeepers greeted him warmly, and even strangers on the street nodded and said, "Sawasti Khrap," as they passed. For the first time in decades, Harold Bennett did not feel invisible. He felt seen. He felt wanted. And that feeling, intoxicating and dangerous, began to reshape his understanding of what his life could be. Call to action. If you find this story as shocking as we did during our research, please subscribe to our channel for more true crime and romance scam documentaries from Southeast Asia. These stories need to be told, and you could help prevent someone from making the same devastating mistakes. Click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you do not miss an episode. Hal met Suda Vorasiri in his third week in Pattaya. It was a Friday night, and he had decided to walk down Walking Street, the infamous strip of bars, clubs, and entertainment venues that came alive after dark. The street pulsed with music from competing sound systems. Bass vibrated through the pavement. Neon signs in English, Thai, Russian, and Chinese advertised everything imaginable. Women in tight dresses stood outside clubs calling out to passing tourists. The air smelled of grill smoke, cheap cologne, and spilled beer. Hal felt fascinated and slightly overwhelmed by the energy, but he was curious. He wanted to see what everyone talked about, wanted to understand this world that felt so foreign and yet strangely inviting. He stopped at a beach bar called Blue Lagoon, a small open-air place with plastic chairs around low tables, a modest bar counter lined with bottles of whiskey and rum, and a view of the dark sea behind it. String lights hung overhead, casting a warm glow over everything. The place was not crowded yet, just a handful of tourists scattered at different tables and a few Thai women working behind the bar and mingling with customers. That was when he saw her. Suda was 22 years old, petite and slim, with long black hair falling in glossy waves over her shoulders. Her skin was smooth and sun-kissed, her features delicate. She wore a simple white tank top and denim shorts that showed off her legs, and she moved with easy confidence as she delivered drinks to a table of older European men. When she turned and caught Hal's eye, she motioned him over with a playful gesture. Her smile was bright and sincere. "You alone?" She called out in accented English, her voice cutting through the background noise of music and conversation. Hal hesitated for a moment, then smiled and walked over to the bar. "Yes, just me tonight." "Sit, sit." She tapped the stool beside her enthusiastically, then leaned against the counter with a grin that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "What you want drink?" "Just a beer. Leo, if you have it." She laughed, a bright musical sound that immediately made Hal feel more at ease. "Of course have. This, Thailand. Leo number 1. She opened a cold bottle with practiced ease and slid it across the counter. Condensation was already forming on the glass. You knew Pattaya? Hal nodded and took a sip. The beer was crisp and refreshing in the humid evening air. I've been here about 3 weeks. Retired. From America. Her eyes widened with what seemed like genuine interest and excitement. America. Wow, you rich man. Hal chuckled and shook his head. The assumption made him slightly uncomfortable, but also flattered him. Not rich. Just comfortable. You look young for retire, she said, tilting her head and studying him with a thoughtful look. Maybe 60. Hal felt a warm surge of flattery in his chest. No one in Arizona would ever have guessed he was younger than his years. 68. Really? No, I not believe. She reached out and lightly touched his arm, a gesture that felt both innocent and intimate, her fingers warm against his skin. You look strong, like my papa. It was a strange comparison, but somehow it did not feel insulting. In fact, it felt affectionate. From that moment on, she began calling him Papa Hal, laughing every time she said it and turning it into a term of endearment rather than an observation about their age difference. Throughout the evening, Suda sat with him between serving other customers. She would jump up whenever someone needed a drink, deliver it with a smile, then return to Hal's side as if he were the only person in the bar who mattered. She asked about his life, his family, why he had come to Thailand. Her questions felt personal without being intrusive. Curious, but not probing. She told him she was from Khon Kaen, a city in northeastern Thailand, part of the region known as Isan, one of the poorer parts of the country. She explained that she was studying tourism at a local university and working toward a degree that would one day help her get a job in a hotel or travel agency. The bar work, she explained with a small shrug and an embarrassed smile, was only to pay for school and send money home to her family. My mama sick, she said softly. Her smile faded for the first time that evening. Her voice took on a heavier tone, threaded with worry. She have heart problem, need medicine every day. Very expensive. I take care of her. I take care of my brother, my sister. I only one working in family. Hal felt a deep stab of sympathy. Here was this young woman working hard in a tourist bar to support her family, putting herself through school despite obvious financial difficulties, and still managing to smile and be kind to strangers. It reminded him of the work ethic he had once been proud of, the long hours in the shop, the sacrifices he had made to build something from nothing. That must be really hard, Hal said gently. You're a good daughter. Suda's eyes glistened slightly, as if she were fighting back tears. Thank you, Papa Hal. Not many people understand. They think bar girl bad, but I only trying help family. Before he left that night, Suda asked for his phone number. You come back? I like talking. You, Papa Hal, you different from other customer. You listen. You kind. He gave it to her without hesitation and typed his number into her phone while she watched with a pleased smile. As he walked back to his apartment that night, Hal felt something he had not felt in years, a connection. Not just attraction, although he could not deny that he found her beautiful, but something deeper. She had listened to him. She had seemed truly interested. And she had made him feel as if he mattered. Over the next 2 weeks, Suda became a constant presence in Hal's life. She texted him every morning. Simple messages like, "Good morning, Papa, you eat breakfast?" Or "How you sleep? Good dreams?" Or "Hot today, you drink water?" The attention was intoxicating. In Tucson, days would pass without a meaningful conversation. His phone would sit silent on the kitchen counter. No one called. No one texted. Loneliness had become so familiar that he had stopped noticing it. But here, this beautiful young woman seemed genuinely concerned about his well-being, checking on him throughout the day as if he were someone worth caring about. He returned to the Blue Lagoon again and again, always greeted by Suda's enthusiastic wave and bright smile. She lit up when she saw him walk in, sometimes leaving whatever she was doing to hurry over and greet him. She sat with him for hours, sometimes neglecting other customers, and they talked about everything and nothing. She told him about her dream of one day opening a small guest house, a place where tourists could experience real Thai culture. He shared memories of running the body shop, the satisfaction of fixing something broken and making it whole again. She told him about her love of Thai food, especially som tam, the spicy papaya salad from her region. He admitted that he struggled with spicy dishes, and she teased him gently, promising to teach him how to handle the heat. One night, after the bar closed around 2 in the morning, Suda suggested they go get something to eat together. The streets of Pattaya were still full of activity, late-night partygoers stumbling between bars, street vendors still cooking despite the hour, stray dogs wandering in search of scraps. They went to a street vendor in a side street away from the tourist areas. The setup was simple: a cart with a charcoal grill, plastic tables and chairs on the sidewalk, and a single fluorescent light overhead. An older Thai woman worked at the grill and barely looked up as Suda ordered in rapid Thai. Suda ordered som tam, grilled chicken, and sticky rice wrapped in banana leaves. She insisted on teaching Hal how to eat with his hands, demonstrating how to take a small ball of sticky rice, press it between his fingers, and use it to pick up pieces of chicken or salad. "Like this, Papa. You try," she encouraged, laughing as he fumbled with the sticky rice which clung to his fingers in a way that felt both messy and oddly satisfying. "This is harder than it looks," Hal said, laughing at himself. "You so funny, Papa Hal," she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "But you try. That important. You good man. I can see you have a good heart." Hal felt something shift inside him as he watched her laugh. This was not just a bar girl being friendly to a customer. It felt real. The way she looked at him, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way she seemed genuinely happy in his company. It all felt authentic. By the end of the month, Suda was spending her days off with him. They went to Jomteen Beach, a quieter stretch of sand south of Pattaya's main beach, where they rented chairs under an umbrella and watched the waves. They visited Wat Phra, the temple with the giant golden Buddha statue overlooking the city, where Suda showed him how to make merit by lighting incense and saying a prayer. They explored night markets together, wandering through stalls selling everything from fake designer bags to fried insects, with Suda acting as his guide and translator. She held his hand in public, something that made Hal sharply aware of their age difference, but also deeply proud. He noticed other expatriates watching them, some with knowing smiles, others with barely concealed judgment. He did not care. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had something other men wanted. One afternoon, Hal met 2 other American retirees at a cafe near his apartment. Both men were in their 60s and had lived in Pattaya for years. Dennis was a gray-haired former accountant from California, lean and tanned from years in the Thai sun. Frank was stocky, from Florida, with a booming voice and a constant sunburn. They struck up a conversation, and eventually Dennis asked, "You seeing anyone?" Hal tried to sound casual, but he could not hide the pride in his voice. "Yeah. A girl I met in one of the bars." Dennis and Frank exchanged a look Hal did not quite understand but did not like. "How old?" Dennis asked. 22. Frank let out a low whistle and shook his head. "Jesus, Hal. Be careful, man. I've seen this 100 times. Hell, 1,000 times." "It's not like that," Hal said immediately, defensively. "She's different. She goes to school. She has goals. She's not just some bar girl." Dennis leaned forward, his expression serious, almost fatherly. "Listen, I'm not judging. We've all been there. But you have to understand how things work here. These girls are working. It doesn't matter whether they're behind a bar or sitting with you at dinner. They're always working. It's their job. You're the customer. You don't know her, Hal said, his jaw tightening. Maybe not, Frank said, his tone softening, but we've been here long enough to know the pattern. They're sweet, they're attentive, they make you feel like $1,000,000. Then they start asking for money. First small amounts, then bigger ones. Then suddenly you're buying a house or a car or sending money to some sick relative you've never met, and one day, poof, she's gone. That's not going to happen, Hal insisted. Just take it slow, Dennis said. Don't do anything stupid like buying property or getting married too fast. Protect yourself. Hal left the cafe irritated and defensive. What did they know? They were bitter, cynical men who could not imagine that someone might actually care about him. Suda was not like the girls they were talking about. She was different. She had to be. That night he told Suda about the conversation, expecting her to be hurt or offended. Instead, she only smiled sadly, her eyes full of understanding rather than anger. They not understand, Papa. They not know me. They not know you. She took his hand and held it gently between both of hers. I not care if you have money or not. I care. You good heart. You kind. You listen to me. That more important than money. It was exactly what Hal needed to hear. He pulled her close, felt the warmth of her body against his, and allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had found something real. 2 months after they met, Suda moved into Hal's apartment. It happened naturally, or at least it seemed that way. She had spent more and more nights there, leaving a toothbrush in the bathroom, then a change of clothes, then more clothes. One evening, as they lay in bed together with the fan rotating slowly above them and the sounds of Pattaya drifting in through the window, she casually mentioned that her roommate was moving out and she could not afford the rent on her own. How much is the rent? Hal asked. 7,000 baht, she said softly. Not too much, but I also send money home and have school fees. I cannot pay everything. Hal did the quick calculation. 7,000 baht was about $200. Nothing, really. And the thought of her struggling alone in some cheap apartment while he had plenty of space felt wrong. Why don't you just stay here? He offered. I have plenty of room. She looked at him with wide eyes, as if the suggestion was more than she had hoped for. Really? You sure? You not think too much trouble? Of course not. I like having you around. Honestly, the place feels empty when you're not here. She hugged him tightly, pressing her face against his chest. You best man I ever meet, Papa. You have such good heart. I so happy. Having Suda in his apartment transformed Hal's daily life in ways he had not expected. She cooked Thai meals for him, fragrant curries, stir-fried vegetables with holy basil, spicy soups that made his nose run but tasted incredible. She cleaned the apartment, reorganized his kitchen and bathroom with an efficiency he had not seen in years. She washed his laundry, folded his clothes carefully. She greeted him affectionately every time he came home from his morning walks or afternoon errands, wrapped her arms around him, and asked about his day. It felt like a partnership, like the kind of domestic comfort he had been missing for years. It felt like a real relationship. But there were signs, small ones, that Hal ignored. Suda began asking for money more often. At first it was small amounts. 2,000 baht here, 3,000 there. She needed to pay for textbooks, she said, or her mother needed medicine, or her younger brother's school fees were overdue. Hal never questioned it. 2,000 baht was less than $60. 3,000 was 90. He could easily afford it, and the gratitude she showed made it feel worthwhile. Then the requests got bigger. One evening in early May, about 3 months after they met, Suda sat him down at the small dining table in the apartment. Her expression was serious, almost sad, and Hal's heart sank immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Papa, I need tell you something important, something I'm very scared to say." "You can tell me anything." She took a deep breath, her eyes beginning to water. "My mama, she very sick. More sick than before. Hospital say she need operation. Big operation cost 80,000 baht." Hal did the quick mental math. About a couple $1,000s. A significant amount, but not devastating. Not compared to what he had. "What kind of operation?" "Her heart," Suda said. A tear slid down her cheek. "Doctor say if she not do it, maybe she die. 6 months, maybe 1 year, they not know." The desperation in Suda's voice was palpable. More tears fell, and she covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Hal felt his chest tighten with empathy and something deeper, a need to protect her, to solve this problem, to be the hero she seemed to think he was. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll help." Suda's face lit up with relief. She got up from the table and threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you so much. I pay you back. I promise. When I finish school, I get a good job. I pay you back everything." "You don't have to pay me back," Hal said, stroking her hair. "Family is important. I understand that." He transferred the money the next day through a Bangkok bank branch and watched the teller process the transaction. 80,000 baht left his account, and Suda held his hand the entire time, squeezing it gratefully. A week later, Suda showed him photos on her phone. Her mother in a hospital bed, looking frail but smiling weakly at the camera. There were pictures of medical equipment, IV drips, hospital bracelets. Hal felt validated. This was real. He was not being foolish. He was making a real difference in her life and in the life of her family. But the requests did not stop. In the next 3 months, Suda asked for money for her brother's tuition. 15,000 baht for repairs to the family house after heavy rains had damaged the roof. 20,000 baht for a motorcycle so she could visit her family more easily without relying on expensive buses. 35,000 baht. Each time, Suda presented the request with tears, gratitude, and promises to repay him. Each time, Hal said yes. How could he not? She was living with him. She cared for him. She made him feel loved and needed. What was money compared to that? Hal's savings account, which had contained about $230,000 when he arrived in Thailand, began shrinking at an alarming rate. By July, he had closer to 180,000 left. He told himself it was fine. He was still comfortable. He could still afford his lifestyle. And besides, he was investing in their shared future. Still, he did not question it. She loved him. She told him so every day. And love, he believed, required sacrifice. Real love meant being there when someone needed you. It meant putting their needs alongside your own. That was what partners did. That was what families did. And Suda, whether he admitted it to himself or not, had become his family. At the end of June, 4 months after they met, Suda brought up the subject of marriage. They were lying in bed one evening. The fan above them rotated slowly, barely cutting through the humid air. The sounds of Pattaya nightlife drifted through the open window. Distant music, the occasional shout, the constant hum of motorcycles. Suda was unusually quiet, staring at the ceiling with an expression Hal could not quite read. "What's wrong?" he asked, turning onto his side to look at her. She hesitated, biting her lower lip. Then she turned toward him. "Papa, I need ask you something. I scared. You can ask me anything. You know that." She took a deep breath. Her eyes searched his face. "You love me?" "Of course I do." "Then why we not marry?" The question caught Hal completely off guard. Marriage had not been on his mind, not seriously anyway. He cared deeply for Suda, maybe even loved her, but he had already been burned twice before. Marriage felt like a door he was not sure he wanted to walk through. It felt like a risk he had already failed at more than once. "I love you," he said carefully, choosing his words, "but marriage is a big step. It's complicated." Suda's eyes filled immediately with tears. "You think I not good enough?" "No, that's not. You think I not young. I not pretty like American girl. I not only poor girl from Isan. But I love you, Papa. I care for you. I give you good life. I not want your money. I only want you." Hal felt a wave of guilt crash over him. "You're beautiful, and you care about me. It's not about that." "Then what?" she asked, sitting up and drawing her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "You not want marry me because of me? Because I work in bar before?" "No, of course not. I don't care about that." "Then why?" Her voice rose, almost desperate. "In Thailand, if girl not marry, people think she not good. They think man not serious. They think maybe she prostitute. I want people know you serious about me. I want my family know. I want everybody know." Hal reached out and touched her shoulder, feeling the tension in her body. The idea that she might feel ashamed or insecure because of him was unbearable. He thought about his life in Arizona, the loneliness, the emptiness, the feeling that nothing he did mattered. And here was this woman who wanted to marry him, who wanted to build a life with him. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's get married." Suda's face transformed instantly. The tears stopped, replaced by a brilliant smile. She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Really? You mean it? You not joking?" "Yes, I mean it. I want to marry you." She kissed him deeply, then pulled back, excitement dancing in her eyes. "We do Thai way. Traditional ceremony. I want my family see. I want everybody know you my husband." "Whatever you want," Hal said, swept up in her enthusiasm. They got married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at a temple near Suda's family hometown in Khon Kaen province. Hal paid for everything: the ceremony itself, the traditional offerings to the monks, the feast for the guests, the flowers, the photographer. The total came to about 120,000 baht, roughly $3,600. It felt like a lot, but Suda insisted it was necessary to do things properly, to show respect to her family and the community. Hal did not argue. He wanted her to be happy. He wanted her family to accept him. The ceremony was beautiful in its own way. Hal wore a traditional Thai silk shirt that Suda had chosen for him. She wore a stunning Thai wedding dress in gold and red, her hair styled elaborately and adorned with flowers. Monks chanted blessings in Pali, a language Hal did not understand but found hypnotic. There was a ritual in which Suda's parents symbolically handed her over to Hal, a moment that felt both ancient and deeply meaningful. Suda's family, a gathering of aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, and neighbors from the village, welcomed him warmly. They spoke no English, and Hal spoke no Thai beyond basic greetings. But they smiled and shook his hand and patted him on the back. Her mother, who was supposedly recovering from heart surgery, looked healthier than Hal had expected. She was energetic, moving around the ceremony site, directing relatives, and laughing loudly. A small doubt flickered in Hal's mind, but he pushed it aside. Maybe the operation had been successful. Maybe she was only putting on a brave face for the wedding. After the ceremony there was a feast. Tables loaded with Thai dishes, from spicy salads to grilled meats to sticky rice to fresh fruit. There was beer and whiskey, and the celebration went late into the night. Hal felt overwhelmed by the attention, the music and dancing, the sheer number of people. But he also felt accepted. These people had welcomed him, a foreigner from another country, into their family. As the night drew to a close and guests began to leave, Suda pulled him aside, away from the crowd, to a quiet corner of the venue. Her expression turned serious again. The joy of the celebration faded into something thoughtful. "Papa, I want to ask you one more thing." "What is it?" "We have house. Our house together." Hal's chest swelled with emotion. A house. A permanent home. A symbol of their commitment to each other. It was everything he had dreamed of since arriving in Thailand. A place that was truly his. A life that was truly his. "Okay," he said, pulling her close. "Let's find a house." Finding the house took less than 2 weeks. Suda insisted they look near her family's village in Udon Thani province, about an hour north of Khon Kaen. She argued that it would be cheaper than Pattaya, quieter, and closer to her family so they could help if needed. Hal agreed. He liked the idea of a slower pace of life, away from the chaos and noise of the city. He imagined peaceful mornings, walks through rice fields, evenings sitting on a veranda watching the sunset. The house they found was modest but charming. A 1-story structure with 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a tiled living room, and a covered veranda. It sat on a plot of land surrounded by rice fields, with distant mountains in view. There was a small garden area where Suda could plant vegetables and flowers. The neighborhood was quiet, just a handful of other houses scattered along an unpaved road. The asking price was 1,200,000 baht, approximately $36,000. It was far less than property in Pattaya or any major city would have cost. To Hal, it seemed like an incredible deal. But there was a problem, one Suda carefully explained as they sat in a small local restaurant after viewing the property. "Papa, in Thailand, foreigner cannot own land. Only Thai people. Government law." Hal frowned and set down his beer. "What do you mean?" "Thai law say foreigners can own condo, but not land, not house on land. They worry foreigners buy too much land in Thailand." Hal had heard of this restriction in expatriate forums, but he had not thought much about it, because he had not planned on buying property so soon. "So what do we do?" "We put house in my name," Suda said simply, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. "But it our house. You and me together. What mine is yours. What yours is mine. We married now." Same. Hal hesitated. Putting the house entirely in her name felt risky, even to him. Something in the back of his mind, maybe the memory of Dennis and Frank's warnings, told him to be careful. "Are you sure that's okay?" he asked. Suda reached across the table and took both his hands in hers, her eyes wide and earnest. "Papa, I your wife now. I not go anywhere. You my husband. I love you. Why you not trust me?" The question stung because it implied a lack of trust in their relationship. And what choice did he have? Thai law was clear. Foreigners could not own land. If he wanted a house, it had to be in a Thai person's name. And she was his wife. They were a team. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." They met with the seller, signed the papers, and Hal transferred the money from his account. The house became hers, or more precisely, only hers. The deed carried only Suda's name. Hal had nothing in writing, no contract, no agreement, only verbal promises and the trust of marriage. Moving into the house felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Suda decorated with bright fabrics and Buddha statues she bought at the local market. She planted flowers in the small garden, jasmine and orchids that filled the air with sweet fragrance. She cooked elaborate meals in the outdoor kitchen, grilled fish, and made curries from scratch. Hal spent his days reading on the veranda, walking through the village, and learning basic Thai phrases from Suda's nieces and nephews, who visited and giggled at his pronunciation. For a few months, life was peaceful. Hal felt content in a way he had never experienced before. This was retirement. This was the life he had dreamed of. But the requests for money continued. They became more frequent and more desperate. Suda needed 15,000 baht to start a small business selling clothes at the local market. Then her brother's motorcycle broke down and needed repairs, 8,000 baht. Then her mother needed another procedure, something about complications from the first operation. Then her cousin needed help with a business loan or he would lose his shop, 25,000 baht. Each time, Suda presented the request with tears and gratitude. Each time Hal transferred the money. What else was he supposed to do? They were married. This was his family now. By October, less than 8 months after his arrival in Thailand, Hal had less than $50,000 left. The realization hit him one morning when he checked his balance on his phone. He had spent over $180,000. Gone. Panic set in slowly, like cold water rising. And then Suda began talking about needing space. "I think maybe I go visit my family a few days," she said one evening in late October. "You okay here alone?" "Sure," Hal said, trying not to show his confusion. "How long?" "Maybe 1 week, maybe more. I'm not sure." She left the next morning with 2 large bags, more than seemed necessary for a short visit. Hal felt uneasy but said nothing. She was his wife. She had every right to visit her family. But the weeks stretched into 2. Her text messages became less frequent. Her phone calls stopped altogether. At the beginning of November, Hal's tourist visa was nearing expiration. He had been living in Thailand on a series of tourist visas, each requiring him to briefly leave the country and return for a new stamp. It was a common practice among expatriates who had not yet obtained retirement visas. Hal had done it twice before without any problems. This time, Suda suggested he go to Vientiane, the capital of Laos, just across the Mekong River from Udon Thani. The trip was simple. Take a bus to the border, cross into Laos, stay overnight, visit the Thai embassy, then return. "Easy trip, Papa," she said over the phone from her family's village. "You go 2-3 days, come back. Everything okay? I meet you at house." Hal did not think much of it. He booked a bus ticket, packed a small bag, and made the trip. The journey to Vientiane was uneventful. He stayed in a cheap guest house near the Thai embassy, submitted his passport, and received his new visa without problems. On the morning of his return, he felt a strange unease, a nagging feeling that something was wrong. He tried calling Suda. No answer. He sent her a text message. No answer. By the time the bus crossed back into Thailand and arrived in Udon Thani, Hal's unease had turned into full-blown fear. He took a Songthao, a shared pickup truck taxi, to the village, watching the familiar countryside slide by with growing dread. When he arrived at the house in the early afternoon, his worst fears materialized before his eyes. The gate, normally open, was chained shut with a heavy lock. A hand-painted sign in Thai hung on the fence. Hal could not read it, but a neighbor riding by on a motorcycle stopped when he saw Hal standing there. "Kai Lao," the man said, gesturing toward the house. "What? What does that mean?" The neighbor switched to broken English. "Sold. Wife sell house. 2 days ago. New family come soon." Hal's legs nearly gave out beneath him. "What? That's my house. I paid for it." The neighbor shook his head sympathetically but firmly. "Wife sell. She signed paper. Her house. Her name." Hal stumbled backward, his vision blurring. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands and tried calling Suda again. This time, a recorded message played in Thai. He asked the neighbor to translate. "Number not in service," the man said. Hal stood there in the driveway of the house he had bought and felt his whole world collapse around him. Everything, the house, the money, the marriage, the dream, was gone. He walked to the local police station in a state of shock. His hands were still shaking. The small station was a one-story concrete building with a Thai flag hanging limply outside. The officer on duty was a young man in a brown uniform who spoke minimal English. Hal tried to explain what had happened. His words tumbled out in a frantic rush. The officer listened politely, took notes, and eventually delivered the devastating verdict through a mix of broken English and gestures. House in her name, her house. She can sell. Thai law. "But I paid for it," Hal protested, his voice rising. "I gave her the money. Over 1,000,000 baht." The officer shrugged with bureaucratic indifference. "You married?" "Yes." "Then family problem. Not police problem. You talk lawyer, maybe. What about the bank account?" "She took everything." The officer checked his notes. "Account joint?" "Yes, but..." Another shrug. "If joint, both can use. Not crime." Hal left the station numb. The afternoon heat pressed down on him like a physical weight. He called every contact he had, other expatriates he had briefly met, a lawyer in Bangkok whose number he had found online, even the American embassy in Bangkok. The answer was the same everywhere. There was nothing he could do. The house was legally in Suda's name. The bank account was joint. Under Thai law, she had every right to sell the property and withdraw the funds. He had no legal recourse, no contract, no proof of his contribution, no protection. In every legal sense, he was powerless. During the following week, Hal stayed in a cheap guest house near the center of Udon Thani and spent his days trying to piece together what had happened. He spoke with neighbors who confirmed that a young Thai man had frequently visited the house during Hal's absences. An older woman mentioned seeing Suda loading bags into a red pickup the day before Hal returned from Laos. With the last of his savings, Hal hired a private investigator in Bangkok, a thin man named Somchai who demanded 20,000 baht up front. Within 3 days, Somchai had answers. Suda had been seen in Bangkok, staying at a luxury hotel in the Sukhumvit area with a Thai man in his early 30s. Somchai showed Hal photos taken from a distance, Suda wearing designer clothes, sunglasses, laughing as she walked arm in arm with the man. They looked like a couple on vacation. The investigator also found her social media account, one that had been hidden from Hal. The profile showed a completely different life. Photos in expensive restaurants, nightclubs, and shopping malls. Photos with the same young Thai man, tagged with heart emojis. Her relationship status said single. The newest post, dated 2 days earlier, showed her in a rooftop bar overlooking Bangkok. The caption in Thai read, "New life, new beginning." There was no mention of Hal, no wedding photos, no trace of their marriage. It was as if he had never existed. Harold Bennett now lives in a small rented studio apartment on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, 700 kilometers north of where his dream died. The studio is barely 30 square meters. A single room with a bathroom, a hot plate for cooking, and a narrow balcony overlooking a busy road. The rent is 6,000 baht a month, all he can afford on the partial retirement income he receives from Social Security. He had claimed retirement too early, reducing his monthly payment to just over $1,000. In Chiang Mai, it is enough to survive, but not to live comfortably. His days are quiet and lonely. He wakes early, eats simple meals of rice and eggs, and walks to a nearby temple where he sits in the shade and watches monks go about their routines. The repetition comforts him. He does not speak much. The few expatriates he has met in Chiang Mai have heard fragments of the story, but Hal keeps most of it to himself. The shame is too heavy, the sense of betrayal too raw. He thinks constantly about returning to America. But where would he go back to? He has no home there, no business, no family waiting for him. His savings are gone. He would have to find work. But who would hire a nearly 70-year-old former body shop owner? He is trapped, a prisoner of his own mistakes. In the evenings, when the heat fades and the city grows quieter, Hal sometimes takes out his phone and scrolls through old photos. Pictures of him and Suda on the beach, at the temple, on their wedding day, standing in front of the house that was supposed to be their future. He wonders whether any of it was real, whether she ever felt anything for him at all, or whether from the very first moment, when she called him Papa, it had all been part of a carefully constructed performance. Most days, he believes it was the latter. Last week, Hal saw a Western man in a cafe, probably in his 60s, sitting with a Thai woman who could not have been older than 25. They were holding hands. She laughed at something he said. The man looked happy, completely unaware of what might be coming. Hal wanted to walk over and warn him, tell him to be careful, protect himself, not make the same mistakes. But he did not. He simply paid for his coffee and left. There would have been no point. The man would not have listened. Hal would not have listened either. I thought she made me feel young again, Hal recently told another expatriate over a cheap beer in a local bar. But she only made me feel foolish. The expatriate nodded sympathetically, but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Harold Bennett will turn 70 next month. He will spend the day alone, as he now spends every day, with nothing but his regrets and the quiet understanding that the retirement he dreamed of, the warmth, the companionship, the sense of belonging, was never real. It was only another transaction, and he paid far more than he could afford. If this story affected you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who could benefit from hearing it. Romance scams destroy lives every single day, and awareness is the first step toward prevention. These predators rely on isolation and shame to keep their victims silent. By sharing these stories, we break that silence. Stay safe, stay informed, and remember, if something feels too good to be true, it probably is. Thank you for watching.